Everyone. Hey everyone, this is Daniel Christian.
Hey everyone, this is Reza Dorrani and
And
welcome
welcome to the
to the
R&D show.
R&D show.
Awesome. So, Reza, tell me how your week was, man.
Busy week. I am actually conducting some Power Platform governance-based workshops for one of my customers. So something interesting, something different, and of course preparing for my next video as well. So I think I'm having a good time inside the Power Platform space. What about you?
Awesome. It was so let's go back before. Last weekend was a 3-day weekend, but I took the Friday off. So I had a 4-day weekend and I had such a blast. Like the Friday, my wife and I, we went on a date, we enjoyed our brunch. But then after you have a 4-day weekend, you still have to do 5 days worth of work in 4 days. So that was a little bit hectic for me, but I'm glad it's all done. And we are here and we're going to have this great show. So I'm pretty happy about this. It was, it is what it is. That's all I can say.
Well, you said great show. I think I and you have kind of gotten a sneak peek of it 15 minutes before the call. So I think I know we are very excited. I'm sure the audience is equally excited, and we are up around 50 right now and growing. So thank you everyone for joining us today. And so Dan, let's get started with this, man. I'm gonna. What do you have? What do you have for us right now? Let's see.
Awesome. All right. So today is huge day because we've got the one and only Ryan Jones. Drum roll, please. He's gonna talk a lot. I know he's gonna teach Reza and me a bunch about Microsoft Dataverse. We'll get to that. We'll get to that in a minute. What I do want to talk about is thank you so much for all the followers for the R&D show. We've got 122 followers. Thanks so much. And on the right side over here, you see our YouTube channel. You're already on Reza's YouTube. If this is the first time you come to his channel, please click on the subscribe and hit that bell notification. It's literally helping us help you. Just thought I'll drop that in. All right. Now, Reza and I want to give a big shout out to Bjorn. He's our big friend on the social media. But this guy goes above and beyond. I mean, I'll be honest, Bjorn, your slide presentation is like 100 times better than what we built. So we want to literally give you a big shout out. I mean, look at this first one. He pushed that, I think, about a year or so ago. I mean, Reza, this is like top notch, man. I mean,
yeah, he grabbed my picture from one of my videos, I think. And I'm looking okay there. Nice.
Yeah. And here's the next one too, is that I think he pretty much nailed it on this one. And then for those of you who haven't figured this out, he has literally switched our names. And you know what? Reza and I literally are brothers, and we are like twin brothers. Like if you take a picture of us from the exact same angle, I remember when we had that time, where both Reza and I had not cut our hair for a long time. We literally looked like brothers at that time. So hey, Bjorn, this was epic, and you're not the only one who actually thinks about that. So jokes aside, thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you. And I think we need to bring him on to cut our promos and thumbnails for our future videos. I think he's doing a better job than us.
I know. Full disclosure, we are not professional at this, so we might be pinging you for some of your artistic talent. Cool. All right. So now let's get back to the whole agenda of this show. Is that we are going to talk about database overview, stuff about what is in the backend architecture, relational data, in and out, and then by the one and only, which is Ryan Jones. So I'm not going to steal the thunder. He does a much better job introducing himself. But there's a few things that I wanted to talk about Ryan. Ryan is a man of many talents. And the one thing that I want a big shout out is Ryan does musical holiday lights as a hobby. This is a picture of his house. I mean, and it's not a video. Otherwise, if it was a video, you would see all of this dance to a musical sequence. And he's got a mobile phone on the top. That is epic. So I had to shout out because I personally do the same thing. I've been doing it for years. This takes a lot of work. It takes time to plan it. And then you got to build musical sequences on that. So big thing is he's definitely a community person. He goes above and beyond just to bring happiness to people's face. And that is a sheer sign that Ryan is a big community person. So let's bring Ryan in, man. The guy's here. I'm excited. Let's bring him in. Yay!
everybody. It's
Thank
so
you
good
so
to
much,
be
Ryan.
here. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be able to be here today. It's an
you.
honor to be able to talk with everyone about Dataverse. And I lead the product team for Dataverse, and so I hope I'll be able to share the things that I know and understand about Dataverse. But I want to also give credit to all of you guys. I mean, when I see the content that you create, when I see the amazing apps everyone builds, it blows my mind. Seeing the way that customers are using these tools to build amazing things, it's awe-inspiring and humbling every day. I mean, to maybe use a silly metaphor, I feel like maybe I'm like manufacturing hammers or something like that, and I try to make the best hammers I can. But the majesty of the hammer relative to the sculpture or the home that is constructed using that hammer is just it's amazing and humbling. So thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Thank you, Ryan, for being on the show. And I just want to say something. Ryan is extremely humble here. For me, he is Mr. Dataverse. That's the name I've coined for him. So I actually wanted to introduce him that way, but here you go. Mr. Dataverse is right here with us to talk about Dataverse itself. So
Awesome. Yeah,
let's get started.
I took it. We're going to stamp it. Hashtag Mr. Dataverse right there. So cool. All right, Ryan. So we've got a question for you, and after that, the show is all yours. Okay. So the premise of today's session is, what is Dataverse? Is it Cosmos DB? Is it Azure SQL? Is it Azure Blob Storage? Or is it just a squirrel running in the back end charging all your stations? Like what is Dataverse? And kind of take us through the whole process and the path. So Ryan, the show is yours. Take it and help us understand what Dataverse is.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Daniel. And I think before we start going into what Dataverse is, I think it's super important for us to start by talking about data, right? Data is what we know. And that data comes from a variety of places, right? That data is central to how we build our applications. And when I say applications, I don't necessarily mean power apps in that sense. I mean our applications that are composed of apps, of workflows, with dashboards, and with bots. And the thing is, all of these different components to our applications, they all orbit data, okay? And that data, it can come from two different types of places in the Power Platform. That data can come from connectors, which allows me to connect to my data in SharePoint lists, in Excel, in SQL, or 475 different other places where that data already lives. But then we also allow you to build that data on top of Dataverse within the Power Platform. Both of these allow you to take action against your data in Power Apps, where you're pointing, clicking, touching on your phone or on your desktop to interact with that data through a pixel perfect or a model-driven experience. It allows you to automate against that data, where you're able to get the cloud to go through and execute a set of predefined steps or workflows for you automatically. We have Power BI that allows you to analyze that data to uncover and unlock new insights. And then we have Virtual Agent, which allows you to build bots that allow folks to chat with that data. I couldn't find a word that began with an A other than agent for Virtual Agent. So I'm sorry, I couldn't keep going with the A theme there. But when we think about these two types of data, we have external data that lives outside of the Power Platform. And then we have internal data that lives within the Power Platform. And of course, we connect to that external data using our connectors. And we use Dataverse for storing data within the Power Platform. And so let's talk about why we might use these different types of data when we build our applications. So why might we use external data? Why might we use connectors? And I think there are two really good reasons here. Number one is it can be really, really easy in that if you already have your data living in a SharePoint list, you already have that data living in an Excel worksheet, You already have that data living in a SQL server. It's way, way easier to get started building your apps and building your workflows just by building your apps against that data where it already lives. Okay, you don't have to move data. You don't have to understand data types. It's just easier and it's cool, okay, to be sure. The other thing that we see is sometimes this data, that place where it already lived, is that data is in its home. I always think of Happy Gilmore when he's shouting at the golf ball saying, go to your home. The thing is, some of this data already lives in a system of record where a bunch of other apps and a whole ecosystem of business logic and business processes are built around that data in a place where it already lives. And in those cases, the switching costs of moving that data to somewhere else, be it to Dataverse or somewhere else, it just doesn't make sense. And so it's totally cool, totally fine to leave that data right where it lives and leverage connectors to connect to that data. Now, when we think about the capabilities that we have in connectors, and gosh, I apologize, guys, this slide's out of date. We actually have built-in connectivity to over 475 plus cloud services, content services, databases, APIs, and more. We have seamless hybrid connectivity where you can leverage our on-premises data gateway to connect to data that lives within your company's network boundary. And for systems which do not already have a connector that exists, you can create custom connectors to connect to those data sources, once again, where they exist, where they reside today. Now, well, you might be saying, well, gosh, Ryan, you really sold us on connectors there. Like, why in the heck would we ever want this Dataverse thing? Totally fair question. So let's talk about why we like that internal data. Why do we think that there's value in putting data into Dataverse? And the first thing I would say is Dataverse is, and I know I'm biased here, but Dataverse is smart, okay? Dataverse understands, because it allows you to express how different pieces of data relate to one another. If you have products and you have vendors, you're able to describe to Dataverse how those two different pieces of data relate to one another. And the thing is, it's not just creating a relationship. It's also that Dataverse in our data runtime, based on the way you describe the shape of your data, we determine the best way to index it, the best way to store it, and the best way to make that accessible for you in your applications and the different surface areas that you have for your applications. And I'll come back to that here in a little bit. The second thing that I would say is Dataverse scales, okay? We have customers with north of 20 terabytes of data within a single Dataverse environment, okay? When you go to certain retailers, I won't say which one, and you say, I would like a screen door installed, or I would like a new window, or I need someone to install a tile floor. Not going to say which home improvement retailer, but every single one of those jobs runs through our system. For some of our customers in the technology sector, if the hard disk in your laptop or your server fails, and they need to dispatch someone to swap out that hard disk for you because it's under warranty and you have a service contract, that flows through this system. In fact, that particular system services hundreds of millions of requests per day, okay? So it's really, really built to support very, very large mission critical systems for our customers. And then the final thing that I would say is Dataverse is built from the ground up to secure business critical data. It's designed from the ground up to secure business critical data. When we think about the history of Dataverse, while the Dataverse name is fairly new, before that we called it well, something I won't mention, and then we called it Common Data Service. But before that, this came from a lot of the foundation of the platform that was central to operating our Dynamics 365 sales, customer service, field service, marketing, and talent businesses. And so the thing is, kind of the lineage of this system is storing and protecting and securing a company's most valuable data assets. And so we have a ton of capabilities. We'll talk more about them here in a little bit that allow you to really make sure that your data is secured, only accessible by the people that should be able to work with it, provide great auditing trail, so on and so forth. Now, I mentioned earlier that one of the ways that Dataverse is smart or clever is that it allows you to use your data in all sorts of ways, okay? And one of the ways that I like to express this is in terms of the types of apps, lowercase apps, not uppercase apps, that you can build using Dataverse. And so as you can see, when you use Dataverse, you can build Canvas apps, you can build model-driven apps, you can build Power Portals, you can build flows, you can leverage AI Builder, you can build dashboards in Power BI, you can build Power Virtual Agents. You are able to maximize the types of apps, the types of experiences that you are able to build over the top of your data. And this allows for all sorts of very, very interesting scenarios where, for example, as a part of COVID response, we had governments that were leveraging Power Platform and Dataverse for vaccine administration and distribution. And Power Portals was being used by the public to sign up for their vaccination appointments. And then Canvas apps and/or model-driven apps were being used in the back office, or in some cases in the field, to track folks showing up for their appointments, administering the vaccine, so on and so forth. And so you have these very, very rich apps where a common set of data is being used across a bunch of different experiences to enable an end-to-end business process. And so once again, Dataverse allows you to do more with your data by allowing you to build the broadest set of different types of apps or components over the top of that data. And so, gosh, I've talked all this time, but like, really, what is Dataverse in a sentence? To the question you asked me at the start of this, Daniel, Dataverse, number one, easily structures data, right? We want it to be as easy to structure data as it is to drag and drop controls onto a Power App canvas, or as easy as it is to add steps to a workflow. Number two is we do this for a variety of data and business logic, because people have relational data, things that would typically show up in tables, but they also have images. They also have files. They also have log history. They also have other needs that drive other types of storage behind the scenes. And we want to make sure that Dataverse can support all of those different pieces or types of data. And this extends to not only data, but also business logic as well, where once again, through clicks and sometimes code if you want to, you can describe business logic that is applied consistently and universally across all of those apps, workflows, dashboards, and everything else that you build. And we do this to support interconnected apps and processes. We like to think of ourselves as silo busters. We are not a fan of app over data source, app over data source, app over data source, because what you end up with is a bajillion, approximately, different pockets of data, none of which are in sync and none of which agree with one another. And then finally, doing so in a secure and compliant manner. So that is Dataverse in one sentence. And so if we look at what's in the box for Dataverse, and we look all the way over at the left side of our screen, first of all, everything we do in Dataverse starts with an API. And this is the API that is consumed by Power Apps, by Power Automate, by Power BI, by Visual Studio or Xamarin, or the tool of your choice if you're a professional developer. And so as soon as you hit that OData standards-based API, the first thing you see or you hit is our security layer, where we ensure that your data is protected through rich and robust authentication and authorization powered by Azure Active Directory with role-based access control and auditing. You then get to our logic tier, which is where we start being clever, where we have things like calculated rollup and formula fields, where we have plugins, business rules, duplicate detection. We then have our data capabilities that allow you to describe the shape of your data, allow you to discover and validate your data, allow you to do advanced things such as multi-language or multi-currency applications for apps that have to be consumed by people around the globe. We then have our storage tier, where we get into the bits and bytes of how we store your different pieces of data into Azure SQL, into files and blobs, semi-structured data going into Cosmos DB, relevant search data going into Azure Cognitive Search. And then finally, we have integration, which allows you to connect Dataverse to all of the other systems that you oftentimes need to do so. And this is beyond what we do in Power Platform, in that we have webhooks for invoking arbitrary web points. We have application lifecycle management with actions or tasks for both Azure DevOps as well as GitHub. We have data export facilities through Synapse Analytics and Data Export Service. And so what I'll do is I'll kind of give an overview of each of these. So when we think about security and Dataverse, first and foremost, in Dataverse, you're always authenticated and authorized based on what's going on in Azure Active Directory, okay? When we look at Azure Active Directory, it's in use by the overwhelming majority of the enterprise or corporate world. And what we're able to do is using Azure Active Directory as a system of record for users and groups. You are then able to assign roles, so role-based access control, that grant your users and or groups access to different pieces of data within Dataverse. And this can be super, super granular, okay? You can do row and field and action and table level security, so that if, for example, you wanted one Azure Active Directory group to be able to update one field on one record in one table, I have no idea why you'd ever want to do that, but you can do it. The system is expressive enough to do that. And this can be done in the context of complex hierarchical security models as well, okay? We also, when we provision Dataverse, Dataverse always lives within an environment which can act as a security and compliance boundary for you. It also defines data residency. So if you have certain data that needs to live in Europe, you have other data that needs to live in Japan, you have other data that needs to live within the United States, you can define where that data lives, and we take care of the rest. And then we have very, very rich and robust security models that, in fact, in some ways you can customize, so that, once again, you are able to secure the data that is critical to your business. Sorry, guys, I'm having a little bit of trouble advancing my slides. Let me try once more.
No worries.
No worries. I mean, I just love what you've already covered so far. It's just from, you know, the security standpoint, from the ease and, you know, shared across the locations. I mean, so far, I personally am just blown out of my mind. So thanks, man, Ryan. I'm learning a ton over here. Thanks.
Wonderful. And it looks like I managed to crash PowerPoint with all my pictures. So just give me 1 second, guys.
Yeah.
No worries. So while you do this, from what I got from this, it's not just a database. There's a lot more to Microsoft Dataverse than just being promoted or sold as a database.
You're exactly right, Reza. Like, one of the things that we say sometimes is it's a database plus plus, or it's more than a database. Maybe for me, one of my favorite restaurants is a place that makes a thing called the Smokehouse Burger. And the reason I love it is because it's not just a burger.
Yeah.
It has, you know, multiple hamburger patties, and there's cheese, and there's sauteed onions, and then there's barbecued brisket, and then there is smoked pulled pork, and then there's bacon. Like, that is where it's at as far as I'm concerned. And so,
and the most important ingredient, Ryan, it is made with love. That is
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I'm almost back up, guys. Give me just 1 second. I'm so sorry to our audience members.
No worries.
No worries.
So Ryan, we've got a lot of good feedback already about your slides, and the most asked question right now is, can we get the slides? So I've promised the audience, once Ryan shares the slide deck with me, I will make it available to all of them.
Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you.
Cool.
We're getting really, really close here.
All right.
I tell you what, I was going to do my demo at the end, but while my slide deck reloads, how about I just go ahead and do a demo now? Because it actually gets into the next part of my presentation, which was really starting to get into the logic capabilities of Dataverse. Okay.
Sounds good. Yeah.
And one of the things about logic in Dataverse is that, you know, we want to make sure that business logic can be applied at a data level. Okay, because it really wouldn't be good if you had business logic that was applied if you work with the data through your Power Apps experience, but then if someone tried to automate that same action, the logic didn't get applied, right? Like this could be a very bad thing. It can lead to inconsistent data. It can lead to confusion for your users. And so we definitely do not want to do that anymore than absolutely necessary. Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure that I was streaming again. Can you guys see my screen okay now?
Yes.
Yep, we can.
Okay, awesome. And so the thing is, we allow you to express this logic in a bunch of different ways, okay? These can be rules around duplicate detection, they can be business rules, they can be synchronous workflows, or more. And so you can create these using low-code facilities, like the synchronous workflow designer that's in the slide. You can do it using Power Effects. And this is new, and this is super cool. In fact, we haven't blogged about it yet, but I'm going to show everyone that's tuned in today what that looks like. Or for pro devs, you can create plugins. And by the way, like this is super cool. You can literally take a DLL. You can take a little snippet of C# code, and it runs in between our API that's up here and the data tier that is down here. And so this allows you to do literally like in transaction custom code. I'm sorry, I'm geeking out a little bit here, but I think this is like the coolest thing ever. And then of course, like as I mentioned, you can also create synchronous workflows that also operate kind of in that within the transaction. But let me demo for you, since I teased it earlier when I crashed my presentation. Let me demo what this new capability looks like. Okay. Cool. And so I'm going to go over to here. And so imagine for a moment, since I'm a holiday lighting fanatic, that I wanted to start a business that that sold holiday lighting related things. And one of the important things when you are in any sort of like e-commerce business is you have to ship stuff. And so let's assume that I wanted to have a table for all of my different boxes where I could track the different size of those boxes. And so I'm going to create this table. And so what I'm now going to do is I'm going to start adding columns. And so what I'm going to do is, of course, we need to know the height of the box. We'll make that a decimal. And we'll also, you know, I think it's kind of difficult to have negative space. So we'll set the minimum value to 0. And then I'm going to do the same thing again for width. And then I'm going to do the same thing for depth. And, you know, one thing I would point out is that I'm doing this, like behind the scenes, we're doing all sorts of stuff in SQL, we're scaffolding APIs, we're doing all sorts of stuff. But here, all I'm doing is pointing and clicking and adding columns. And so now,
this is very similar to a modern SharePoint list experience where you can add columns on the fly. Very
yes,
neat.
meant to be super simple and straightforward. Now, what I'm going to do now is add a formula column where we're able to calculate a column within Dataverse using Power Effects. And so volume in this case would be my height times my width. Note the awesome intelligence as I'm doing
now. Wow.
By depth, and then I'm going to create. Okay, so now I have my volume. And so here, if I wanted to have my small box, and this is 1 inch by 3 inches by 4 inches, maybe for shipping something like a Raspberry Pi. you'll see that it calculates the volume for me. And so there in just a few
Whoa.
seconds, I went through and defined a table. I defined all its columns. I then defined a formula column, or it's kind of like a calculated column in SQL Server, used PowerFX to define that formula, and it just worked like that quickly. So, I mean, the idea is super, super powerful, but also super, super easy as well.
Good grief. I'm getting goosebumps over here. I'm so excited.
So that feature I like is one of my favorite features that we've shipped recently. So I'm super stoked about it. So anyway, logic, and so we'll keep rolling. Oh dear, not again. Okay, shoo. We then have data, right? And as you saw, we provide facilities for you to be able to define the shape of your data so that your data models match your business's needs. Once you've done that, you can very, very easily connect Power BI Desktop to author Power BI reports and then upload those to powerbi.com. And as you do that, we actually have very, very special integration with Power BI. We support what's called Power BI Direct Query, which allows you to get instant real-time analytics over the top of your Dataverse data in the context of the person who is running the report. So all that security stuff that we talked about earlier, all that gets represented in your Power BI reports when you leverage direct query mode. And then Dataverse is smart and intelligent too, in that many of our AI builder capabilities are actually enabled through Dataverse, whether we're talking about text recognition, business card reader, entity extraction, and more. These things are leveraging Dataverse behind the scenes. Now, from a storage perspective, and this kind of gets to your, is it this or is it that question that you asked earlier, Daniel.
Right.
We use all sorts of goodies in Azure to make this thing work. We use SQL. We use Cosmos DB. We use Azure Storage. We use Azure Cognitive Search. We use Azure Data Lake. And we glue all this stuff together behind the scenes so that we can store your data in the best way. And this lets us do very unique and cool things. Like, for example, smarter search that allows you to have really, really simple, easy, fast, and high quality search to quickly and easily find data within your system. And we are able to abstract away all of the interesting things going on behind the scenes with all those pile of Azure services that I mentioned earlier. You don't have to think about it or worry about it. And then, of course, Dataverse supports all sorts of integrations. We have APIs that allow you to consume or communicate with Dataverse from custom code if you want. These are the same APIs that Power Apps, Power Automate, and all the other tools communicate with. We support invoking webhooks, pushing events to Azure, Event Hub, and Service Bus, as well as data export through Synapse Link to Azure Synapse and Data Lake. We'll come back to this in a little bit. We have great data integration capabilities to move data in and into Dataverse, and not just move that data, but transform it along the way. And then the other thing that we have is this capability called virtual tables that allows you to kind of like mapping or mounting a drive in Windows or Linux. You can map or mount a table that lives outside of Dataverse into Dataverse. And once that's done, you can start using it through many of the applications that we talked about earlier. Once again, when your data is in Dataverse, you can do more with that data. And so maybe to give an example, first of all, everything starts with a table, right? And here I have a products table that shows many of the products. If I were to start my Holiday Light supplier company, many of the products that I have. And you can see we have things that are numbers, we have things that are strings, we have things that are decimals, we have vendor, that's actually a relationship between our product and vendor table. But the thing is, this would not be a very compelling set of information to put on a website, right? We're visual people. And so, of course, we want to support images for this, right? And so the thing is, we do some clever things in Dataverse in that when you create an image column, you can enable it to store full-size images. And then what we do is we create a little thumbnail. We store that in SQL because you're wanting to render a big list like you see on the screen all the time. But then we take the full-size image and we put that in Azure storage behind the scenes. You do nothing for this other than tell us you want a full-size image, and we take care of all the heavy lifting behind the scenes, okay? Now, you also want to be able to find that data. And so the thing is, we also are able to, you go in and say, you know what, I'd like to make name searchable, because that seems like a thing that you'd want to search. It probably doesn't make sense to make like weight searchable or vendor ID here searchable. Maybe in the vendor table it is searchable, but you can go and configure that, and all of a sudden you get super, super powerful search over the top of this data. Once you've defined that table, we expose not only the APIs for you to be able to interact with the product, but also API that describes the shape of that data as well, okay? Now, just having data isn't enough. As we talked about earlier, you have to have that business logic as well. And so we provide mechanisms within Dataverse for you to define or describe your own business logic methods, not only, or this is above and beyond the data logic that you can describe that executes as a part of create, read, update, and delete operations. And so what this can do is, as for example, you create another product, maybe we're adding a new receiver in this, then what we're able to do is emit a data event, a product created event that pushes to Power Automate, so that we're able to run a workflow as quickly as possible and with as high a fidelity as possible. Now, we've also been more recently working on capabilities around business events, which allows you to describe not only a data event, like, hey, a product was created, but also an event that has specific meaning to your business, such as like, hey, this product, my Raspberry Pi, they just went out of stock, okay? And then we also now allow you to define custom APIs as well, so that whether they're business events or other things that you want to push into Dataverse, you can do that as well. Now, of course, this is very sensitive, important holiday lighting information. So we have that enterprise class security infrastructure that we talked about earlier, because I'm sure left up to my wife, she tolerates my holiday lighting hobby, but I'm sure she would want inventory of all these things to go to zero very quickly. Or maybe she'd like me to sell them all, buy her some jewelry instead. But anyway, and then finally, it's important that we are intelligent as well. And so what we're able to do is we're able to take this data and shadow it into Azure Data Lake. What that does is that gives us a super high read throughput replica of the data that we can then use to train AI models. Okay, this is what lets our AI models provide better inferences. Okay, and so once that model is trained from the data that is shadowed in the lake, we are then able to perform inferences through AI Builder, once again plumbed together through Dataverse. And we run on Azure, okay? We are one of Azure's largest customers, okay? We have a single endpoint. We hide all this infrastructure from you, but we have a load balancer that sits over the top of roughly 11 billion different servers that operate in VM scale sets for my Azure folks that are joining us today. And these handle things like posting our APIs, running our async processing and jobs, running custom, potentially hostile code in our sandbox servers, generating paginated reports in our reporting servers. And then this layers over the top of all of those different storage technologies that I mentioned earlier. But then you can also extend with Azure, as I talked about earlier. Webhooks can invoke your Azure functions. Service endpoints can push events to Event Hub Service Bus. Those same webhooks could be hosted in Azure Kubernetes Service. And then we export data left, right, and center to Azure Data Lake and Azure Synapse. And maybe to talk a little bit about this. So we have some cool capabilities with Dataverse Synapse Link around how we're able to create a gateway between insights and usage, okay? And so through through Dataverse Synapse Link, you can configure export of your data, like that product catalog that I showed you, into Azure Data Lake. You can also export your product the metadata about that product catalog into Azure Synapse. Now, the thing is, a lot of times You don't do this because that data lives by itself. What you want to do is you're wanting to join that data with other data that comes from other places. And so let's assume that I had a legacy like support ticketing system running in SQL Server, maybe even on-prem. I can use Azure Data Factory to take that data, move it into Azure Data Lake. And then what I can do is I can run SQL queries and Spark queries over the top of that joined data within Azure Data Lake, but using the SQL language or the Spark primitives that I'm most familiar with as a data scientist. Then finally, if I wanted to make that data from that legacy support system visible through Dataverse, perhaps to use in a Power Apps portal, I can leverage virtual tables to mount that table or map that table into Dataverse so that it looks and acts like other Dataverse data. Now, if you're looking to get started, we have a light version of Dataverse that's available in Dataverse for Teams. It's a subset of the capabilities of what we talked about today, but for going in and quickly and easily defining a table and going in and building an app or workflows over the top of it, it's there, it's today, it's included for practically anyone that has Teams, and it's fully governable by central IT. It's built on the core of Dataverse, so it gives you a little bit of everything that we've talked about today, supporting up to 1 million rows, okay? And of course, fully upgradable to Dataverse. And so guys, with that, I think I'm 3 minutes behind schedule. I apologize for that, but we want to do some Q&A.
Wow.
Yeah, my goodness. I mean, I'm kind of speechless a little bit over here. That's impressive, man. One of the favorite things which I liked was about the flexibility to scale, take it from the existing Dataverse and then scale it. That's huge, because now you've also factored in those enterprise level companies where they can consume that database space so fast. It's like, no, you're all good. You can go ahead and now scale up at a higher level, and you've given them options to scale. So I feel like you guys really have put some thought into this process, and that's what really impressed me a little. But Reza, what were your thoughts on this?
I think I'm speechless right now. I'm just trying to get my head around what's like how powerful this service truly is. Backed by Azure, using all of Azure's services, and the best part is the backend architecture is controlled. So as things change, as Azure improves, I am very sure that those services will also automatically come into Dataverse, because Dataverse is going to utilize those features. Scalable, billions of data. You're talking about security at a column level, hierarchical security. Which data source offers these kind of security options? Quick creation experiences, relational data. I think this is the full spectrum. And the beauty is, if you want to start small, you have Dataverse for Teams. So you can always begin there, start exploring Dataverse, learning more about it, and then you have a magic button upgrade. It just takes you from the small capabilities of Dataverse to the full feature set, wherein you can explore and utilize the complete power of the service. So I think that's my key takeaways from Ryan's presentation today.
Yeah. Awesome. So Ryan, we've got some fun but yet meaningful questions for you. So Reza, if you want to go ahead and show my slide. So, okay, we've all now established it is definitely more above and beyond. This is not the back end of database. Ryan has convinced me I'm good. So Ryan, I got some questions for you, right? So let's go with this. I want you to tell me, what is your first impression? There's going to be some pictures coming up. Take a look at it. Give me your first impression. All right, picture number 1. SharePoint is not a relational database. What is your first impression? Go.
I agree. I would also say, and I hope this is consistent with what I shared earlier. The thing is, we want you to build apps. We want you to build workflows. And so if your data already lives in SharePoint and it's working just fine, then go build your app or your workflow on SharePoint. Okay. There are going to be cases where you need more complex relational data modeling. There are going to be places where you need larger numbers of rows and records. There are going to be places where you need more complex security models. There are going to be places where you need more complex logic. We've got Dataverse for you when you need that. Okay, but SharePoint's awesome. We have lots of customers building Power Apps and Power Automate workflows over the top of SharePoint today. And so, we talked about like when to use connectors and all that earlier. I think that applies here as well. But the thing is totally right. SharePoint is not a relational database.
Awesome. All right. Question number 2, or slide number 2. What is your first impression on this one? Take a look at it. And it's kind of funny, right? The database is the new kid on the block coming in and saying, "Yay, database! Everybody come hug me." And then all these other SQL, Cosmos, banging it up, and like he's down on the ground sore. But way in the back, there is Excel hiding, sweating bullets, and right next to it is SharePoint hiding.
So,
buddy. So, question is right back to you, Ryan. What are your first impressions? Go.
I have a few thoughts. Like, number one is sometimes people ask us all the time, like SQL and Dataverse, right? And the big thing I would say here is we love SQL. Like, we are one of the world's largest SQL customers. We are rapidly growing to be one of the world's largest Azure Cosmos DB customers. We're pretty far down the list on some of the other like Azure, but by storage volume, we are one of the world's largest Azure Cognitive Search customers. And so the thing is, we love all these technologies. Okay, I think that's super, super important. Like, our team has weekly discussions with Azure SQL. I'm on a first name basis with Rohan, our CVP of Azure Data. Like, we work very closely together. Okay, and so we love all these tools and technologies. And I mean, I think to our discussion earlier, if you already have a system of record that's running well on top of SQL, we have connectors for that. Okay, but I think that if you have data that needs a home, it doesn't yet have a home, and you're looking to maximize the number of apps that you can build against it, and you want to do so in a way that's friendly for non-pro developers, I think you should really take a good, long, hard look at Dataverse. And so, I think my version of the diagram might be that a bunch of the characters are holding hands and we're playing Red Rover. Okay, I think that might be my mental image that I'd have for that. Okay, so I really over answered your question.
No, thanks. So it's all in good humor, but there was some good content over there. Cool. So we've got some time, and one of the things that Reza and I already did was we actually got some questions both from our community. So we'll go and ask them, and I can already see some questions coming in on the chat. So go ahead, Reza. You've got the first one.
Yeah, so I'll start with my question. I just want to point this out that all the folks on the call, this is your chance to ask your questions. Put the letter Q, post your question. We will try and answer as many questions as we can. Okay, so please post your questions in the chat. In the meanwhile, we're going to start with some common questions that Dan and I received from y'all, plus questions that Dan and I have. So the first question, in fact, I think we have 4 questions, Dan. I've added one more in my head once Ryan went through. So I'll start with my question first. Dataverse is a part of the Power Platform. We have data connectors that allow us to connect to other data sources. Correct me if I'm wrong here. When Power Apps or Power Automate makes a query against my data source through the data connectors, it goes through a double hop process. The request goes to Azure. It goes to a service in Azure that reroutes it to the underlying connector to get the data and bring it back. And there are challenges there in terms of delegation and other sort of issues, not issues but challenges. On the other side, because Dataverse is a part of this platform, when the Power Platform queries Dataverse, it directly queries the API. So there is no double hop that is taking place there. So is that a fair assumption that I'm making right here?
It is, with one important qualifier. Okay, when you pick your connector, when you're building your app or your workflow, and nowadays we do more things to kind of steer you to pick the right one, but you want to make sure that you use the Dataverse connector. Okay, we have a bunch of other connectors that I think sometimes they're labeled classic or legacy. Those actually go through that double hop infra that you're talking about. But if you use the new Dataverse connector, or if you go through the inline table creation in Power Apps experience, that does that direct connectivity. It tells Power Apps and it tells Power Automate to talk directly to those APIs that I showed you in the slides earlier today. And that makes it super, super fast. It makes it super, super reliable. And what it also means is pretty much as soon as we add new capabilities to Dataverse, those things light up in Power Automate and Power Apps, as opposed to like us needing to, tap dance to update the connector and everything else. So I hope I answered your question there, Reza.
You did. Thank you. All right. Second question is from Dan.
All right. So one of the things which was, inquisitive to me is this. We kept hearing is there was a version 1, like a V1 and a V2 of Dataverse. So what is this? Because I felt like the switch got flipped overnight. Everything still worked, but what happened? Like, first of all, did I just hear rumors? What is this V1, V2? Yeah, can you just
Great
elaborate on that?
question. Yeah, so a long time ago, back when Dataverse was called the Common Data Service, there was a thing CDS1 and CDS2. And they were different things. They were completely different, like platforms, everything else. And the thing is, we kind of had to make a decision. CDS V2 was actually the runtime that sat beneath Dynamics 365 customer engagement, now sales, service, marketing. And the thing is, we had a pile of data in that system. We didn't have a whole lot of data in CDS1. And so what we did is we merged the two. And so we completed those migrations. Gosh, I think it's been 2 or 3 years ago now. We've never had a Dataverse V1, V2. Dataverse has always just been that CDS2 and continuous innovation. So there was a thing, but like I don't think there have been any CDS1 environments around now for like 2 years or something like that. So there was an earlier incarnation of this, but it's no longer around. And we went through great lengths to help folks that needed to help them move, to help move all their data. If there were issues working through that, like we really believe strongly in like no customer left behind, because we realize how important this data is to our customers and how important the apps are that are built on top of it.
And Ryan, is that one of the reasons why many a times we used to see default environment upgrade? Is that the upgrading from
Yes.
V1 to V2?
Yes, that's exactly it. But I don't think if you're seeing that today, please send me an email, ryjones@microsoft.com, because you should not be seeing that button anymore, because we upgraded to all the environments, like I said, a couple years ago now. I'm not, sorry, pandemic has turned my brain to mush, so I don't really remember how long ago it was.
All right, let's move on to the last question from me and Dan, and then we will open the floor up to the audience. So the last question is around file storage. So SharePoint traditionally is a document management system, file storage, versioning. You can store up to millions of documents. So what would you want to add to this? If I was to say, all right, I need to store files and I want to store it in SharePoint because it's a storage space. I won't call it free, but it's included with my license, Office license. Dataverse for Teams is limited in terms of storage. It's only 2 gigs. If I start adding files, I might consume that capacity pretty quickly. So what would you like to like, what points would you like to add on this specific topic? And I hope I'm not putting you on the spot here.
No, not at all. So when I think about like where SharePoint is super, super strong and like amazing, I mean, I use this feature all day, every day, is around collaboration on those documents, right? When you need to have folks that are working together on the same Word document, on the same PowerPoint deck, on the same Excel sheet. I mean, we're going through semester planning right now. Guess what? All our documents live in SharePoint, not in Dataverse, okay? So like that's kind of like point number one that I would make. Like there are a set of scenarios where SharePoint is super, super strong, and I can't imagine using anything else, okay? Now, the second like thing that I would say is there's lots of times where those files, they aren't really files by themselves, right? Like imagine in that products table that I showed earlier that I had like a schematic for each of those products. Maybe it was wiring diagrams or like a true electrical like component schematic. The thing is, that's not really like a separate file with its own life cycle, right? Really, that's like a file that's a part of the record itself. and security and everything else should follow that of the record. Okay, and that's where we see that Dataverse is stronger, which is when like literally a file can be treated as though it is just a column on my data, and I interact with that very broadly. In fact, like I mentioned some of our big customers earlier that use this, like in the home improvement services space or in the IT space. Like one of those customers in particular actually just moved tens of terabytes of data from SharePoint into Dataverse for this reason, as well as when folks scale up to be really, really large, when you have like hundreds of thousands of users that are going to interact with the system, many tens of thousands of monthly active users, that's really not what like a single site in SharePoint is designed for.
Makes sense.
And so that's kind of where we see. Hopefully, I answered your question.
No, you did. And in fact, now we're heading to the audience questions, and I think the number one question kind of is interrelated with this. So let me pop this up on screen. This question is from Mr. Amit Agarwal, and the question is: all right, we want to get data into Dataverse. What is the option? How can I just bring a SharePoint list directly into Dataverse? Do we have any options available for that?
So the most common way that we see people bring data into Dataverse is through Power Platform data flows. Okay, Power Platform data flows has the ability to connect to a bunch of different data sources, and you're able to connect it to those data sources. You're then able to either create a new table or map like the existing data source to an existing table. You can perform inline transforms. It's actually a really, really cool technology. So the most common way that we see folks do it is through Power Platform data flows. Another common mechanism for smaller data volumes is, and I don't know how well this would work in the SharePoint list specific scenario, forgive me. You guys know more about SharePoint than I do, okay? But like another common thing that we see folks do is if it's a small data set that they can open up in Excel, then they will, we have an Excel connector, Power Query connector for Dataverse, and people will copy paste the data in Excel and then save from there, because lots of folks are familiar with and know Excel. So that's another common mechanism as well. Actually, both using Power Query behind the scenes.
Can I also use that table designer experience that you showed earlier and just copy and paste? Can I do that?
Oh gosh.
For small data.
I haven't tried it.
Okay.
So because I'm thinking you would want to like select a whole bunch of cells.
Yeah, just select and just put it in there.
And, yeah, I apologize. I haven't ever tried it before. Makes me want to try it now. Sorry.
All right. Okay, let's go to the next one. So the next one is from Krishna Vandanapu. He's one of our MVP community folks. So the question is, in Dataverse, changing data type is not possible. But there was a new article yesterday, and I did read about this, that allows you to change the data type by specifying the nature of the data. But it needed an API call. Could you please explain this in a bit more detail?
Yeah, and I'll give maybe kind of a two-part answer here. Part one is, remember behind the scenes, Dataverse is using all these storage subsystems, and they are what we call like strongly typed systems. Okay, in that when we go through and we're figuring out how to materialize that products table that I showed earlier in SQL Server, we're needing to determine like, okay, are we using varchar or invarchar? Like, just so everyone knows, we use invarchar to support Unicode and customers around the globe. But so, we're doing this, invarchar thing. In other places, we're using other SQL data types. Okay, so that's the first thing to maybe keep in mind is behind the scenes, we have to set the data type on the storage that we're using. Okay, now, historically, we have not allowed you to change the data types at all. If you picked single line of text and you actually needed multi-line text, you're kind of out of luck. And the thing is, the way Dataverse actually stores those things in SQL or in other storage systems, it actually doesn't change. okay? Really, it was just around allowing updates of metadata. And so that's what I believe Nathan published this blog, yesterday. That's what we're allowing to do, where if you accidentally pick multi-line text and you need single line of text or vice versa, kind of as long as we don't have to change how the data is physically stored, we now allow you to change the data type of columns. Now, the question around, and maybe to give an example of this, imagine I have a column that is of type multi-line text, and I have words typed into it, and I want to convert it to decimal. The thing is, that's not a conversion that can be done. And so that's why we don't allow it in the experience, because you'd end up with data loss. Now, the second part of Krishna's question is, well, I have to do this through API. Why is that? And the answer is this. We had lots of customers that said, hey, I really, really, really need to be able to change this. Please help us out. And so we built the capability kind of in the data backend, but we're still in the process of updating our experiences so that people can do that through clicks rather than code. And so this is a place where you can change this now if you're familiar and comfortable with APIs, but if not, you've got your experiences. So I hope I answered the question, Reva and Krishna.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the next one. This one is from Vishal. Is there any limitation for querying millions of records in my Dataverse tables? Because Dataverse is scalable, it is designed to hold large data or big data. Will it have an impact on performance? I'm assuming he's relating this to building apps and flows that query big data.
It's a great question, Vishal. And so what I would say here is, like, from a proof point perspective, we have customers with billions upon billions, that's billions with a B, records within a single table, okay? And so the thing is, like, the system can scale to be quite large, okay? Now, the thing is, when we say querying millions of rows, that kind of means different things to different people. And so one of the things that is cool about Dataverse is we actually look at the way you've defined the structure of the data. We look at the views that you have defined for the data, and then we look at how your apps are interacting with the data, and we use this to optimize how we define the clustered and non-clustered indexes in which the data is stored. Okay, and so the thing is, like, we optimize Dataverse based on how you've described your data and how you're using your data to be as fast as possible. Now, you can do things that will make Dataverse perform slowly, the same way that you can do things that make really any data source perform slowly. And so, I don't want to say that Dataverse is perfect. It's not. But the thing is, for kind of like reasonable actions that we can take to ensure great performance, we do all of those things for you, okay? And so the thing is, we have systems with billions of records in a single table that still provide sub-second response times, okay? And so we can scale quite well, and we do all the optimizations we can from a data persistence and a data indexing perspective to ensure that the system runs well. So I hope I answered the question.
Oh, I think that was that was a very comprehensive response, and
there's a lot of questions coming in, and we'll try to get to that. But I think, Reza, we have time for one more.
Yeah, probably a couple more. So I'm trying to skim through the questions. I'm sorry, guys, if we missed some questions. Sorry, but we are trying to get as many answered. I'm trying to pick questions here. So here's another one. I like this one. This one's from Gaurav. So as a developer who's new to this platform, right? It's the first time I'm accessing this platform, and I'm comfortable with maybe SharePoint. And now I notice that there's this Dataverse, and Ryan has kind of convinced me today that Dataverse is an extremely powerful data service and a lot more than that. So I want to start learning and exploring about Dataverse, and I'm new. I don't have a license, and I'm assuming he's relating to a premium license. So is there anything for me to get started with as a developer?
Great question. And so the answer is yes, and you kind of have two paths, okay? Path number one is Dataverse for Teams. And one of the reasons why we recommend this is you get, essentially the more Office license use you have, the more Dataverse for Teams environments you get, And so this is a way to not only kind of kick the tires and try it, but to even do it at scale if you want, okay? So that's option number one. Option number two that we have is we do have our community plan, which includes Dataverse entitlements as well. And so you can sign up for the community plan, you can create a Dataverse environment, and so you then have an environment for kind of like personal development and those sorts of things. So anyway, like we have both of those options available. Like please come to kick the tires. Like we think this is a pretty cool thing. You know, if I didn't think it was cool, I wouldn't work on it. So yeah, we totally have these options for you, and you know, feel free to choose your own adventure based on what will work best for you.
Perfect. And the last question, and you know, we do not want to make this a sale for Dataverse. Of course, it's not. We are trying to tell you what's available here. So I kind of like this question. I'm taking it in a good way. The question is, what is something that Dataverse is missing? So let's try and do a comparison here. Is missing as against, let's say, a SharePoint or a SQL, right? These are the common data sources that we select. So what is something that it's missing, when not to go for it, when to go for SharePoint, when to go for SQL? What would your recommendations be? And trust me, Ryan, that's the number one question almost everyone is asking.
Totally. And I think I might answer the question like a little bit more specifically even than how Shreya asked it and how you asked it, Reza. In that the biggest thing that I see folks like sometimes getting, like when we think about SQL Server can actually support a variety of workloads, right? It can support transactional workloads, and that's really what's in Dataverse's wheelhouse. And it can support analytical workloads with its columnar data stores. And so the thing is, Dataverse is not a data warehouse, right? It's not an AS cube. It is not. It doesn't use columnar store behind the scenes. Like it is designed for more transactional style workloads. Okay, because like think about it, in Power BI, when you load data, you load like a bajillion rows in like 5 seconds, and then you do read-only operations, get through that in your dashboard. The reason why it does those super high volume imports is because it's optimized to ingest a bunch of data and then do read-only stuff against it, okay? When we think about Dataverse is designed to support interactive transactional data that's used throughout the Power Platform. Okay, so that's scenario one that I'd say, don't do that. Go use, you know, an analytical data store of some sort. Okay, scenario number two is Dataverse is very, very focused today on apps that get used within your corporation, or in some cases with like your partners, with some what we call B2C connectivity to like your company's customers through Power Portals or through Power Virtual Agents. And so if someone was saying, hey, you know what, I'm wanting to build, you know, Christmas lights for Uber, or you know, Uber for Christmas lights. Sorry, I got it in reverse there. The thing is, the people that are going to be working with that app primarily are not people that reside within my organization. And think about how we talked about how much of our security is built and designed and optimized around Azure Active Directory. It doesn't make sense, right? Because the general public has no presence in your company's directory. And so I think that those are kind of two kind of main litmus tests. Is it for a line of business app? If no, then it's probably not right for Dataverse. And then question number two is it an analytical app? And if the answer is yes, then it's probably, hey, probably go somewhere else. So hopefully those are like two great examples of kind of disqualifying use cases for Dataverse.
Brilliant. I think I really like that analogy. All right, so I think that's it for live Q&A. And once again, thank you to Mr. Ryan for taking the time out and coming and joining our show. Thank you so much and sharing. Honestly, I think you've gone above and beyond what we knew it's going to be awesome, but I think at least my mind is blown. So really appreciate this. Thank you so much. And I hope you come join us again.
I would love to. Thank you so much, Daniel and Reza, for inviting me and allowing me to join you today. And thank you for everyone that tuned in for allowing me to share a little bit with you about Dataverse. Hopefully we can help you be successful and do more with your data.
I see a lot of love and interest. I think we broke almost the number 200. So I think we have an awesome audience, and I see a lot of love coming in for Dataverse. So thank you, Ryan, once again.
Awesome. Thanks, really.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. So just some items to talk about really fast. What we have for the next session, it's show number 4, and it is all going to be about Power Virtual Agents. Things we're going to cover about Power Virtual is both the angles, building standalone chatbots directly in Power Virtual Agents. We'll switch gears and now build it in Microsoft Teams. And then we'll also talk about how we can leverage Power Automate and build flows to go and pull information from Dataverse and really get the Power Automate, the PVA chatbot a little bit more responsive over there. And we will also show some hidden gems, things which are not very obvious, but they are existing in PVA. So you definitely want to keep track of that one. So it's on September 24th, same time over there. And then finally, I just want to quickly show our status right now as far as all the the events that is happening, specifically our hashtag. So
Dan, we can't see it right now.
Yeah, it's coming up. And so right now, as we stand, these are our top 3 winners. First of all, just big thank you to everyone who tweets about all of this with the hashtag R&D_show. Thank you so much for doing that. We're picking all of them up, and we're going to go ahead and keep track of it. And as we get close to the end of the season, we will be making that announcement of who the winner is, and then that person will get a chance to actually have a lot of one-on-one time with us. So, but all said and done, thank you for helping us promote our channel over here, and thank you for helping us just help share the knowledge. You're helping us help you in that way. So that's basically all I had. Thanks once again for stopping by. Reza, any last words?
Oh, I think once again, I'd like to thank Ryan for joining us, and thank you everyone for coming live to our show. Amazing audience. I think you guys keep loving us, and we will keep working hard to bring quality content and bring amazing people like Ryan. So thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Bye everyone. See you in 2 weeks. Bye.